God our Father is the perfect Father. Now, I'll spare you the Chris Tomlin song, and I won't go down that path. But when we recognize that we do have a Heavenly Father who is not a representation of our earthly Father, but a perfection of what fatherhood is to look like, well, then we can begin to lean into what we wanted in our earthly father and discover it in our Heavenly Father. That and a whole lot more is what's coming up this week, guys. So let's go. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to the Next Men Up,
part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome back once again to the Next Man Up podcast. So good as always to have you along for another episode and to be part of this community that is changing the world by raising up healthy and godly men. Thank you for doing your part as a dad and for your sons. Thank you for being part of this community. And as I said, thank you for joining us once again today for another episode. One of the things we love to receive from you, the listener, is feedback. And the topic that we're going to tee up today came in the form of a question from one of our listeners. And the question went something like this: how does a dad give something to his son that he never received from his dad? Now, that can take lots of different forms. I think the listener was specifically referring to the approval or the love or affection from father to son. But if we think about that topic a little more broadly and ask, how do you give what you've never been given? This is what we're going to lean into today. When I heard that question, I immediately thought of my own experience as a boy growing up in my family. If you've listened to this show for a while and you've listened to my story, you know that I was given all kinds of opportunity and head start from the relationship that I had with my dad. In fact, I talked to him just this morning before recording this episode to fact check a couple of things that I'm going to share with you. Because I went back into my own story when I heard this question and realized that my dad had made this jump. He had made this leap from giving to me something that he never received from his father, or in more specifically, his parents. And so my story is really one of a good one, a great dad, a great relationship that I still enjoy with him to this day. And I will enjoy until we're unable to enjoy it any farther. But I know that's not necessarily everyone's story. And as you're listening to this question, I don't know what's coming up in your mind. It could be a lot of trauma. It could be a lot of pain. It could be things that you've worked through already, but still have memories of. There is the get over, but never really forget aspect of working through some of the relationship pain and trauma, especially that which we receive from our fathers. Our fathers are so influential in our lives, either in a positive way or in a negative way. So I don't know how you are hearing this question, but I want to lean into this today. How can you give something that you've never received? And in fact, in a small way, and I'll share this in a minute here, I understand this question. I understand the sentiment behind it because I've had to do something similar in my own life, even with the fantastic example and relationship that I have through my father and with my father. I still understand where this is coming from. You know, when my dad was young, he played basketball, starting in junior high all the way into college. And even this morning, as I was talking to him, I learned some things about the college experience that I hadn't heard before. But one of the things that I remember him telling me and then confirmed again today is that his mother never watched him play basketball, organized basketball, whether in junior high, high school, or in college, until he was in his sophomore year in college. Now, I know we lean into this idea of men and fatherhood and boyhood and all of that, but his mother never watched him play basketball until he was into his second year in college. And when I heard that early on in my life, I had a greater appreciation for the decision that my dad made at some point as he became a parent to say, I don't want to be like that. I want to be different. Now, his dad was involved. He watched his home games, never really traveled, which there could be factors for that, cultural factors, economic factors. So his father was involved, and his mother was involved in her own way, as so many moms are, by keeping all the uniforms clean. But he knew that as a dad, he did not want to be absent from any event that he could otherwise make it to. And so my memories of all of my sporting events, whatever sport it was, are that dad and often mom were in the stands, whether it's a home game or an away game, whether it's a school team or a summer team, a summer league. Dad was always there. And I knew I had his encouragement and I had his affirmation. But one aspect of my story where my dad was not there, so to speak, where I had to learn to give something that I had never received, is when it came to initiating my boys. And I won't recount my entire story, but for those that have heard it, you know that in my late 20s, I realized I didn't know if I had yet crossed that threshold into manhood. And when I discovered the idea, the process, the way in which men have been made for thousands of years that we've lost in our current society, this idea of rite of passage and initiating them, I knew I wanted to be able to give that to my boys, even though I had not received that from my own father. And so I understand from my dad's experience and a little bit from mine what it means to ask, what it means to answer even this question of how do I give something that I never got. And I guess I just have a couple of thoughts as to maybe how to work through that. And the first thought is this: you have to be able to grieve what wasn't or will never be. Now, I know we're guys, right? We don't like to grieve. We don't like to talk about negative emotions. We don't cry. It's just there happens to be some moisture that develops in our eyes occasionally. I get all that, and I'm poking fun at it and understand the nonsense of this cultural pressure for men not to feel pain or not to experience emotionally the grief or even physiologically what comes with grieving. And maybe for you it's minor, but maybe for you it's big, having to grieve what never was, and maybe because of your circumstances, what never will be. To do this, you've got to acknowledge the impact on you of not receiving that engagement, that affirmation, that love, that attention, whatever it was for you. You got to acknowledge that exists and feel that emotion and grieve. And then through the process, make the decision to move forward. Like my dad, when he became a parent, said, I want to do it differently. When I embraced this idea of initiation, that decision to say, well, this is what I think I needed in my own life. I didn't get it, but I want to be able to give that to my own son. And I know these are lighter examples than what many of you have experienced in the absence of a father, or maybe even the abuse of a father. But the starting point is to grieve it, to feel it, and then to be able to let it go so that you can make the decision to move forward. Now, maybe for you that involves counseling, or maybe hiring a coach, or working with a mentor, or getting into another community of men that are walking this road together. Whatever that requires from you, you know that there are resources out there. And so I would encourage you to engage in those resources and begin or continue to work through letting it go and moving on. Another aspect of this that I think is vitally important, and of course I would, because I see life through the lens of Jesus and what he's done and who he is. But that's also recognizing that God, our Father, is the perfect Father. Now, I'll spare you the Chris Tomlin song, and I won't go down that path. But when we recognize that we do have a Heavenly Father who is not a representation of our earthly father, but a perfection of what fatherhood is to look like, well, then we can begin to lean into what we wanted in our earthly father and discover it in our Heavenly Father. Part of my story that doesn't often come out here is not only did I decide I wanted to initiate my boys into manhood, I realized that I had an opportunity to cooperate with the ongoing initiation that Father is performing in me. Now, just crossing that threshold from boyhood to manhood isn't where things start. In reality, they just continue. It's a new chapter, and there are more chapters to come. And so what I'm discovering in my own story is God is continuing to initiate me into and to become the man that he wants me to be. I'm receiving from Father in heaven something I never received from my earthly father. So what does this take? Well, first of all, it takes trust that he's not like your dad. Even if you had a great dad, he's not like your dad. For those of you that had an awful experience and anywhere in between, God the Father is not like your dad. He is the perfect representation of what father should be for their kids, for his kids. So trust that he's not like your dad. Become familiar with who he is and his character. Talk to others who know him better than you, who have walked with him longer than you. Engage the biblical text and notice what the writers are telling us about who Father is and his character and how he wants to relate to us. Let him fill that need in you that you never were received or was never filled by your earthly father. Again, how do you give something that you were never given, at least from your earthly father? Begin to receive it from your heavenly Father. A couple of resources that I'll call out for you here. 2 books that I've absolutely loved are Fathered by God, written by John Eldredge, and then Not Forsaken, written by Louie Giglio. Both of them get to the heart of the child who has experienced pain and heartache from their earthly father, and then helping the reader, helping that person who's experienced that to work through it and find what they need in Heavenly Father. Again, Fathered by God, Not Forsaken. I'll put those references in the show notes, as I often or always do. And then the other thing that I would say, maybe for those of you that aren't inclined to look toward our Heavenly Father, or maybe just need another simple reminder or a simple association of how to do this, it's this: how do you learn anything new? How have you learned to do what you do currently? How have you learned that new skill or that new craft, or learned to work with that new tool or operate that new machine? How have you learned anything new? Well, you study, you watch, you follow after someone who knows how to do what it is you're trying to do. And then you move from watching and studying to practicing. And then that practice becomes progress as you stack experience upon experience upon experience. So let me say it this way. You know how to do this because you've done it and demonstrated the capacity already in your life by learning new things and trying new things and doing different things. You've had to learn to do something new, something that you didn't automatically know how to do. And so how can you apply that same learning to passing something on to your boy, something you didn't get from your dad? How can you give that to your son? Well, by learning how to do something new. Here's another way to think of it, another way to lean into this. What would you have wanted as a kid? Whatever that is, whatever it is you would have wanted from your dad as a youngling, as a boy, as a teenager, as the novice or the apprentice in our language here, whatever that is, begin to find a way or to demonstrate or to give that to your boy. Lean on your own experience and intuition there as a way to guide you to give something to your boy that you never got. Again, some resources, a men's community, a community of other dads that are trying to figure it out, finding mentors, finding older and wiser men or fathers that have leaned into fathering their sons well. Those are great resources for you to tap into to find a way to give what you've never been given. Guys, if you don't know this, then you haven't been with us or you haven't been paying attention. Fathers have such a huge impact on their kids. Obviously, we're talking primarily here about boys, but it's beyond just boys. Fathers have an impact that's huge on their kids, whether positive or negative, but it's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to us what we will do with that impact and this responsibility that we have as fathers. So I encourage you, I challenge you, if there is something you did not get from your dad, find a way to give that to your son, even if today you don't really know how to do it. Okay, guys, there's my challenge. There are my thoughts on this topic. If you have any thoughts on this topic or any other topic or question or things that you'd like us to get at here, feedback@thenextmanup.com is our email. We would love to hear from you. All right, that's it. We will be back same time next week. Looking forward to it. Until then, adios. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.